Good morning, everyone. Uh, I hope you're all doing well. My name is Mubarak Smaila, and I'll be taking you through an entrepreneurship session this morning on the topic how to effectively develop, define, and present a business idea to attract potential investors, partners, and also customers. So something brief about me. My name is, like I said before, my name is Mubarak Smaila. I'm the CEO and then co-founder of a fintech startup in Ghana called Benzo Money Technologies, which is a digital savings and lending platform for unbanked individuals in the informal sector. I also run a podcast series called A Tribe Called VC, which serves to connect African startups with venture capitalists. And also, I work as a design thinking facilitator at the Design Thinking Ghana Hub. Right. So, like I said, I'm going to take you through a session on entrepreneurship. And we can't talk about entrepreneurship without mentioning the word startups. As it's defined by Eric Rice, a startup is any human organization that creates something new under conditions of extreme uncertainty. There are three main components of this idea or this concept of a startup that we need to pay attention to. The first is that it's any human organization. So that means that it's made up of a team that creates something new, which refers to the innovation bit or the creativity bit of having a startup. And then finally, under conditions, create something new under conditions of extreme uncertainty. Now, I hope you're aware, but startups are actually high risk ventures. Out of every 10, 9 of them fail. And so it's a high risk venture or they are high risk ventures. But then when you are able to do it very well, the payout is actually very huge. The most important thing to pay attention to is the fact that before you start any startup venture, you need to identify a problem that exists in the lives of people. So you first of all have to start with that. Is there anything that you've been able to see? Maybe there's something that people have been doing for a very long time and have not actually looked at it in a in sort of a different way. Maybe you came around and then realized that this particular thing that people have been doing for a very long time can be done in a different way. And so that, in essence, is you being able to identify the opportunity. Someone describes it as a vu deja experience. That is, there's a deja vu and then there's a vu deja. So the deja vu is something, it's like you've already seen something. But with the vu deja, it's something that you've been seeing for a very long time, but you haven't looked at it in a particular way. Now, there's also something called a feedback loop that would go through very soon. And I think I would like to emphasize here that when you are starting any startup, it's very important to pay attention to your vision. What is your why? Why are you actually embarking on solving that particular problem, or why are you chasing that particular opportunity? So your vision is very important. And also, where do you intend to get to? Do you intend to grow the startup into a huge venture? Do you intend to exit at a particular point in time? But like I said, the most important thing is having that vision in mind and also starting off by solving a problem or by identifying an opportunity. There's a tweet that I have here. It's something that I think this was on my LinkedIn and also on my Twitter. So I basically try to define it's how to start any startup venture in very simple terms. And what I have here is a startup is an experiment that involves identifying a gap in people's lives. That is something that we often call a job to be done. So is there something that you've observed? Are people trying to get something done? And then you create a solution based on assumptions. So we'll go through this very soon. And this solution is something that you can offer at a price. And also after creating the solution, you then have to build a blueprint of it, something we call a minimum viable product, and then you can test it to validate whether it actually works or whether it actually solves the pain point of the customer. And then after the testing, you need to evaluate it and then see if it actually worked. If it didn't, then you need to iterate or you need to go through whatever you went through again to basically come up with something that actually solves the pain points of the user. And I clearly state here that the startup model actually follows the scientific method, Right. So like I said before, you need to first start off by identifying a problem or an opportunity. And this is where the idea usually comes from. So how do you identify this gap? A very popular framework that we use for identifying ideas is something we call design thinking, which is a human-centered approach to creative problem solving. So in the design thinking process, we're able to find out who the customer is, identify what the pain point of the customer is. We're also able to develop solutions or ideas that we can test with the customer and find out if it actually worked or actually solved the pain point of the customer. So we have the empathy phase, which, as we all understand, putting yourself in someone's shoes. During that phase, you're going to go out and immerse yourself in the lives of the customers, speak to them, observe how they do their things, and then after all of that, you're going to gather a lot of information. Now, after gathering that information, you need to be able to define that information in a meaningful form, something that can help you to be able to come up with an idea that would solve the pain point of the customer. Then we move to the ideation phase. That is where we brainstorm on several solutions that we think could solve the pain point of the customer. Now, the last thing is, or the last but one thing is, where you prototype the idea and also finally you test it. Now, one thing to note in this process is the process is an iterative process. So you could go from building an idea and then going back to the empathy phase because you realize that you didn't empathize enough with the end customer or the end consumer. So it's very iterative. You might go forward and then come back, you see, so it actually looks like a loop. This is something we call the validation board. Now, once you've been able to find out an idea, or you've been able to identify an idea or find out the pain points of the customer, you need to come up with something we call assumptions. So like I said before, the startup framework follows the scientific method. So you need to come up with things that you think that exists when it comes to the customer. So if you are building an application for a phone, or you're building an application for let's say a laptop, you need to validate if for instance the customer has a phone, has internet connection. These are things that you would have to list down in the beginning. So these are the things we call your core assumptions. So you have to list down all of these things and make sure that they are super clear. And then the next thing to do is to validate the assumptions. Now, in validating the assumptions, we have something called an MVP, which is a short form of what we call a minimum viable product. Now, this is something that can help you to be able to test the assumptions and validate them. Now, when it comes to the MVP, we have something called the smokescreen MVP and also the concierge MVP. A very common example of the smokescreen is you making a video of the solution, or building a website, or sort of making a flyer that you could share with people and then get feedback from them. So the aim of the MVP is to help you to be able to validate the assumption, to make sure that whatever you are assuming from your side is actually what exists out there. Now, if you don't validate these assumptions, you might end up building something and then you send out to the user to use, and they would tell you that they can't use it because of some sort of limitation that they have, or they can use it but will not be able to pay to basically pay for it. So it's very important to validate these assumptions before you build anything. Now, I also have another post here which says that test every assumption, like I was saying before. That's how you know what the target user or customer thinks. Now, one other framework that could help you to be able to do this is to find out your why. Like I said before, your vision. Why are you doing this? Now, who are you trying to sort of target, or whose problem are you trying to solve? And then what is it? What is already in the market? Are there any type of sort of competitors who are already there doing something that the same thing that you want to do? And the final thing is that how do you differentiate yourself from them? So we're gonna go through some other slides where we'll basically talk about this. I also have here that there's nothing like a good idea or a bad idea. A good idea is the idea that works, and very often it's implementation that shows the results. There's a very common problem when it comes to sharing your ideas to people. People don't like sharing their ideas with others because they think that those people are going to end up copying their ideas. I think that it's very important for you to share your ideas with people in order to get feedback. Usually, like I said, the idea doesn't actually come from you. The idea actually comes from the field. It comes from you observing something that is already taking place outside. And so the chances of other people seeing the same thing is high, but maybe you have a certain way you think you can implement it or solve it, right? So it's the implementation that matters, not the idea. It's easy to come up with ideas, but it's very difficult to implement the idea. And like I said, try as much as possible to share your idea with people to get feedback. Don't be afraid to share your idea with people. If you have any questions on this particular slide, I'm happy to answer them after the session. Right, and there's also another tweet that I put out, something that we mostly say in design thinking, that the problem is not a problem. The problem is the identification of the problem. And often, like I said before, people think that whatever they've been able to observe or whatever they've been able to see is actually the problem that exists. But chances are that is not the actual problem, and you'll be able to find out the problem once you go down there and then speak to the end customer. And also, it's very important for you to know how to frame your assumptions, or know how to frame your, I would say an assumption. I wouldn't call it a problem, but you often need to start with something, right? It's like your first problem, and then you go out there and then go and validate it and find out what the actual problem is. So it's very important for you to be able to frame this, sort of frame your challenge before you actually go out there to go and then validate things. Now, the aim of every startup, according to this post of mine, is to find a validated path or formula to a sustainable business. In simple terms, it's about validating that 1 + 1 will be equal to 2. And once this is proven, the next thing for you to do is to scale that 1 + 1 is equal to 2. So like I was saying before, you've been able to identify a gap that exists in people's lives. You've been able to come up with something that could solve it. You validated it. After all of this, you've tested it. After all of this, once you're able to figure out that formula, that thing that actually solves the problem, the next thing for you to do is to actually scale it. That is taking it to other people. Now, this is also in line with the other slide. So it says here that when it comes to, there's also one thing that I would like to state here. There are some terms that we often use in the startup field. We have the problem solution fits, the product market fits, and then scaling. Now, with the problem solution fits, this is where you've come up with an idea and then you want to see if your idea actually solves the problem. Now, at the product market fit stage, you actually build something that you can test, right? So it's like you have something and you want to test it with the market to make sure that the thing actually fits the market, right? It's easy to build a solution for one person, but if you want to scale this thing to a lot of people, you need to validate if the thing actually solves the problem that exists within that market. Now, this is also in line with the other slide. Right, so certain things to note when you have a startup idea or you intend to pitch to investors is, like I said before, you need to pay attention to your vision. Why are you actually doing this? And at the end of the day, you also need to make sure that whatever solution you come up with fits the problem. And after having the solution fits the problem, you need to make sure that whatever you build, whatever solution you build is actually able to fit the market. And also it should be scalable. It should be something that you can scale to other people or to scale to other places. And then it should be profitable, right? You can't, you're not doing this for nothing. You're doing this so that you could also get some type of benefits. And then the final thing is that whenever you're going to present the solution to an investor or a partner or let's say a customer, there are certain things you have to pay attention to, and that's actually on the next slide. Yeah. So when it comes to fundraising and then partnership. So I'm going to delve into what it means to fundraise and also what it means to partner with people and the kind of things that you'd have to do. You have to pay attention to when you are presenting your solutions to them. Now, why do you have to fundraise? It's very important. Money is very important. You need money for your product development, for your marketing, to get new people to join your team, and also to scale your solution. So it's very important. And I said before that startups are they are risky ventures, right? So they are filled with a whole lot of risk. And at the end of the day, you need to have some money so that you could start with and make sure that you're able to sustain yourself whilst you are validating your ideas or your solutions. And also, when it comes to the type of investors or the type of funding, they are angel investors, they are venture capitalists. There's something we also call a syndicate, where you have a group of investors who can come together and then fund your idea. And when it comes to the funding strategies, there's equity, where you take money and then give the person who gave you the money a percentage of your business. There's also something we call a convertible debt or note. This is where you take money from someone, and the money is like a debt. Now, this money would convert on the future events, like when you are raising your next round. And there's something called crowdfunding. This is where you have a whole lot of people who can basically give you access to money for you to use for your product development or other purposes. There are platforms like I think there's a Pantheon and some other platforms. I can't remember their names right now, but you can go there and then set up a campaign and then use that to basically get access to funding. And the other thing is when it comes to funding, there's something called a pre-seed round. There's a seed round. There's a Series A. So it starts from A to Z. So the pre-seed is something that you would like to take when you are at the problem solution fit stage, where you're trying to make sure that the solution that you have actually fits the problem. If you are done with that and then you still need money, so during your product market fit stage, you might want to go for a seed, and then when you are ready to scale, you can go for a Series A. Also, the thing to note here is that investors normally would not invest in ideas. They invest, the first and the most important thing that they often look out for is your team. So the notion is that at the end of the day, your idea can change. I said before that you might be you would be testing it and to make sure that the thing actually works, to find out what 1 + 1 is equal to 2. So you might end up changing the idea. It's a concept called pivoting. And so when your idea change, you can go to a different idea. But when your team changes, it affects the entire makeup of whatever you are trying to do. So it's very important to make sure that you have a solid team. You have all the skills that are needed to solve that particular problem, and also you have the years of experience that would make someone comfortable in giving you access to funding. Now, there's something we call the elevator pitch. Now, this is a pitch that you would mostly give someone when you have a few seconds or minutes to speak to the person. It's normally 60 seconds to about 3 minutes. So maybe you meet someone at an event and then you would like to introduce to them whatever you have. Some of the things to pay attention to include telling them what your vision is. Why are you actually doing what you're doing? What's the problem that you're trying to solve? What's the solution? What differentiates you? And why now? And timing is very important too. Timing is super important. I think there are times that you might do everything right, but then because the timing is not right, whatever you've been able to do does not become successful. It's not your fault. It was just the time, whatever happened during that point in time. So you need to be able to make sure that that your point of entry or your time of entry is actually the right time to implement something like that. And then finally, why you? So like I said before, your team is very important. Why you? Is there anything that is unique about you that you think the investor would like to know and then might make him very happy to give you money? And then the final thing to note is the investor pitch. So that is when you're pitching money to an angel investor or a VC to actually fundraise to grow your venture. And when it comes to partnerships, you might want to look at strategic partnerships and also building relationships. What strategic partnerships here means is that you would, if you are doing something that has a value chain, are there other people that you can work with in order to scale, in order to grow, right? And it's very important to build relationships. In business, everything depends on relationships. Funding, partnerships, it all depends on relationships. So it's very important for you to build relationships with people that you intend to work with, and also get to know them very well. And so you might want to partner because there's something called corporate funding. So you might have like a company, like a telco or a bank wanting to invest money in your business. So in that case, you'd have to pitch to them as people that you would want funding from. But normally, you would go to someone to partner with them so you can launch something together with them, or that also you can scale quickly. Now, it's also very important to make sure that you're signing your NDAs with them so that you can protect your intellectual property. Normally, at your first meetings with them, you try as much as possible and then sign these NDAs so that you make sure that they don't end up stealing something from you, or you don't take something from them unduly. Yes, and so when everything goes through well, there's most likely going to be sort of a pilot test or a proof of concept test where you ensure that whatever you have actually works well with their system. And then when everything is finally settled, you probably sign an MOU, which shows that you are in partnership with them officially. Now, these are some of the things to look out for when you are making your presentation. First of all, when you are presenting to the customer, to a partner, and then finally to an investor. When you are presenting to a customer, the things that you would want to pay attention to is the problem, the solution, the value proposition, and how different you are from the competitor. So they might be using something that is already in the market. What makes you different from that? Now, with the partner pitch, often you would like to show them what your vision is, what the opportunity is, what the problem is, what the solution is, what the value prop is. You also want to show them a demo of what your solution looks like. Also, who exactly are you trying to target? Is that in line with the people that they are trying to target? And then you'd have to give them or show them an act slide. So what exactly do you want to work on them with, and why do you need to work with them? Why them? And you also need to give them like a view of what the competitor landscape looks like for your business, and also show them that you are actually very experienced and you have the team to solve the problem. And then an important thing to note here during the partner pitch is that it's very important for you to not disclose your strategy. So the partner could be someone that could implement your idea. And like I said, it's not actually about the idea or your business, it's about your strategy, right? What is it that sets you apart? What is it that you're doing differently from what they are doing or what others are actually trying to do? And so it's very important here to not disclose your strategy to that partner yet. Now with the investor pitch, it goes, it's very similar to the partner pitch, just that you would have to include your strategy to show the investor that when he gives you money, this is how you're going to grow over the next few years or months. You'd also have to show them sort of a business or product roadmap that shows whatever you're going to be launching at a particular point in time. And also you need to let them know what your unit economics are. How much does it cost you to acquire one customer? How long does the customer stay with you? And how much do you spend to maintain that sort of customer? And how much do you make from that customer? It's very important for you to show that clearly to the investor. And there should also be an ask where you basically let them know what you need from them. Is it funding? Is it sort of coaching? Is it both of them? Yeah, so that is it for that. All right, so I think we're a little bit over time. So I would, if you have any questions, I will check them in the Q&A. And yeah, maybe we could spend a bit more, maybe a minute or so to answer them before we go. All right, great. So I think I have a couple of questions. There are quite a lot, but we have our time is finished. So what I would do is that I think I'm going to end the call and then I'll allow the next person to jump on, and then I'm going to answer your questions. Right. So thank you very much for listening, and yeah. So we'll interact very soon.